So I'm Natalie. I work with George at the Kinder Institute, and I head a lot of the like the digital work around like a golden civilization. So like like running the website, blog posts. We do like some Facebook live interviews, so writing up those. And I help George with these meetings on like the tech side, if there's like going to be a PowerPoint or anything like that. And then I also share like any resources like that are kind of talked over. But the sessions vary like pretty greatly depending on like the amount of people that are in attendance and what people want to talk about. They're kind of created as a space for people to just like ask questions about the process.
Great. So we could have dozens at times on this, and other times it's just a handful like we've got now. And Natalie is not only helps on the tech side, but she's kind of a master of the resources that we have available. So if I am not sure about something, she's very valuable to have helping us out. And she's also been on a number of these, so she may reflect as we go along on her experience. And Frank, why don't you, lovely to see you again.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Really great to be here and great to see you as well. And I'm the founder of Perfect Day Strategies Life Planning and the Karma Barn Yoga Studio here in Nova Scotia, Canada. So I also retired recently from a financial planning business, sold my business to my daughter, but this was back in February. And as George says, I'm following my dream of freedom, my dream of freedom, that's right. So I did my trainings with George, 7 stages of money maturity, Evoke training, and life planning training back in 2012. And I drop in from time to time to check in on these particular sessions. I do have intention of bringing this to my group in addition to the yoga that I do and some of the talks that we do. So, but I'm actually looking in any way. I'm just curious about how this whole situation in the U.S. is going to unfold around the election. My hearts go out to all of you. I it's with a lot of pain right now that we're empathizing with your situation. But if there was any kind of support that we could offer at this end, then so happy to help in some way, but mostly moral support, if anything. So all the best with that. We watch it with bated breath. Good luck. Anyway, I'm really happy to be here. This golden civilization takes on more significance, greater meaning by the day. I've read the book early on. I started to be so long-winded here, but I must say I was busy when you first had the book published. I know I looked at it and I said, okay, that's interesting. This is cool, but I wasn't really taking it in. And then, the more sessions I tuned in and I read it again and I read it more closely and very powerful, very powerful, meaningful material and just so deep. And I love it. And I love the connections that I have with the Kinder Institute, and you in particular, George. So keep up the great work. I should cut it short there. So thank you.
I could listen to you all day with those kind of compliments, Frank. Particularly, yes, as you pointed out, with the difficult times we're going through here, we can all use moral support.
Support, please.
Really, really, I can tell you, Patrick clearly wants it too, and
crazy.
It's a very difficult time. I mean,
Yeah.
You can see by my white hair, and I don't know, but I was in the 60s, and this is a lot tougher than those times were. And it takes me back to my dad's memories of the Great Depression, probably, just how challenging it is in a different way. So thank you for that. And I've got some thoughts. And let me just share with you a little bit. So Patrick was sharing that he was in on a webinar that I did, which was a wonderful conversation. If you have a chance to listen to it, Dorian, is it Mincer? I'm trying to remember.
Mincer, yeah.
Mincer does these podcasts, and a few hundred people, but she does them beautifully, and was really thoughtful with her questions. And so we were very engaged around all of this. And it is an intermingling of life planning, mindfulness, and a golden civilization was what the frame was. And that's where Patrick heard of me, a week or two ago. And so glad you're here as well, Patrick. And maybe, Frank, since you're a little bit further in familiarity with what we do, what I thought I'd do is go through the structure of the golden civilization conversation. And I think that'd be useful, and particularly for Patrick, who knows it just a wee bit. And but what I was thinking, Frank, what might be fun with you, and I don't know whether you're game for this or not, but it might be fun to think about the yoga group that you're in, and think about how we bring this structure and how we might, and you bring up any problems, any concerns, anything, and we just kind of map it out. So then you've got a much stronger frame for when you think that you might want to do it. And one other thought about that in terms of the politics. I don't know how, one of the things that's pretty horrifying to many of us in America is that foreigners getting involved in our democracy in some way. And, as much as Canada is filled with brothers and sisters of us all, so there's that, that concern there. But I think the thing that you can do if you're really looking for something is just, you've got such a warm heart, and connecting with anybody in America and letting them know you empathize lets us know that what we're doing is important in the world and important to others elsewhere. And the other thought that I had is doing a golden civilization conversation is kind of picking up the baton and saying, whatever happens, even whatever happens in America, the country that's been at the top of all of this, the leader in democracy for so many years in some way, one of the leaders, strongest leader, most powerful, no matter what happens, we're going to keep the light going. And let's do it here. And so those are my two thoughts about that. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, I'm game to do almost anything here. I just want to be clear on what the ask is. And what I'm hearing you ask is, would I like to lead a golden civilization talk right now? Is that kind of what I'm hearing, George?
Well, it wasn't exactly. You know me. I'm usually not a hard, sell kind of guy. But I was thinking that that it, from the soft sell kind of standpoint, it might be fun and intriguing and interesting to go toe to toe with you, looking at what the golden civilization conversation might look like if you were to bring it to the yoga group or to any other group you had, just to look at it and to kind of fantasize what are the difficulties, all of that. And it would help Patrick because, Patrick for the first time is looking at what it's all about. And so it might stimulate thoughts for him. So I thought it would just be an interesting exercise, given that you have had some intrigue around the possibility of doing that. Yeah. So not saying do it next week, but just saying, what if we went at it and just kind of looked at it?
Well, yeah, I'm up for that.
Okay.
I'm up for that. Small group. And you're my backstop, George. And
Frank got more than he bargained for this morning, I think.
I think secretly I might have wishing it and hoping for it. So
well, there you go.
knows?
That often,
Things unfold for mysterious reasons, don't they?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes someone comes on and they've just given one. And then we'll go at what they did and what the problems were, what the excitements were and all that. That's another way of learning. Patrick, going into this, is there anything you would like to add? I mean, we'll share a bunch.
Okay.
You'll get a bunch. But is there anything you'd like to add as to what, if you've got questions or what intrigues you? So as I frame everything,
Well, just a little bit of background. I'm living in a active adult community of about 4,000 in the very southwest tip of Utah in St. George. We have Zion National Park here, and we're not too far from the north rim of the Grand Canyon. And this is a very attractive retirement destination, I guess. And lots of Californians are clearing out of California, moving this way. And so a big pop in the population here for people in of that retirement age. And so I've done a couple of workshops on sort of third life, third act type things with interested folks here in the community. I just came from a meditation group that my wife and I are a part of. And so I kind of aligned with what I heard you speaking about on Dory's webinar there. I've not yet read your book, but it sounds intriguing. I like the idea of a workshop that's not just directed inward, but directed outward. And the other two workshops I've done, I've just been here for a couple of years. We've been here a couple of years. But I think a lot of people, I'm not telling you anything new, that they want to know what they can do. They see the problems, but they don't see how they can impact those problems. And so, yeah, that's just in a nutshell how I ended up here this morning.
well, oh my God, that's just fantastic, Patrick. And it brings up a few things before I go back to Frank. And it relates to what Frank's, because, Frank, has this audience also that is likely to be very interested because they are good people and they have a meditative frame, but they're also engaged in a way in the world. I think this is ideal in a way, and I've given it at senior centers in America and maybe in England as well. And it's ideal just for exactly the reasons that you're bringing up, that it provides a frame for how we can make a difference. And we like it as an ongoing conversation.
Yes.
Be, every couple of weeks, could be every couple of months. But ongoing means that people come back and reflect on what they've done and where they go next. So they're building on it. And the idea is, one of the things I love about the retirement community, I mean, obviously I'm old enough to be in it easily, and is that we all have this wealth of experience and knowledge, and we've seen it all before in a way, even though it keeps coming back in different ways, the challenges. But we've got a lot of experience and wisdom and maturity around it. And so many of us want to contribute, but we've let go of either our communities, or we've let go of our workplaces. We've let go of a variety of resources, but the elder community itself is a tremendous resource.
Yeah.
So, so I think I'm excited to hear what you're saying. I'd be happy, you can pick my brain now in this hour and a quarter left, or at another time. And I'm sure you'll pick up stuff as we go through, Frank. But okay. I would be thinking, and the other thing, just for both of you, is that I have to. I think you may know, you may not know, but I had a terrible pneumonia over Christmas and into January, and the fatigue with it is still with me. So I'm at about half speed. Most people don't see it because I really relax other than when I present. So when I come on, I'm here. But it means that I can't do nearly as much as I'd love to be doing. But that's just a preamble to saying that I would love to be part of your conversation if you're hesitant to give it yourself, if you felt it would help.
Oh, absolutely.
but on the other hand, I might not be able to, or Laura might be able to, and our team here, Natalie's cohort basically, and who's often on here when Natalie isn't, and but has done a few more of these than Natalie has. And another person is Mary Zimmerman, who Frank may know. Mary's very active in the life planning community in the world, and she basically says, where, and I'll go anywhere, she said. And she's out in your neck of the woods, kind of, you know, she's in the south, in Arizona, Scottsdale, but in the great western part of the country. So anyway, so that's also there, but we think anybody, you bet, and we think anybody can give it. And many people have given it on their own and just and gone forward with it. So let's go through the, Frank, I'm going to show the 3 flip charts, and then we'll come back for just a minute's meditation, just because we grounded in meditation, as you know. So Natalie, if you'll just show those 3 flip charts that are, that's it. And I hope you can see those 3.
Yep.
And yep, and you'll see that the, it's basically like, Patrick, you won't be as familiar with this as Frank is, but in my life planning legacy is a movement that is that uses a particular methodology with their clients called evoke. And it goes, it listens, and that's a lot of the meditation pieces. We start with inner listening, and then we're listening, and it listens with empathy and inspiration, and toward empathy and inspiration. And then it builds a vision. And that vision is of the client's life, of who they really want to be, what would be profound, meaningful, exciting, dramatic, life-changing. And then, and when we promise them that, we said, let's make it happen. And we promise them it in short order, not in retirement, not 10 years from now, in short order. And then we go out, okay, so what could possibly get in the way? And those are the obstacles. And we list them all. And that's so the model's called evoke, and E is for exploration, that's for listening. V is for vision, that's what we've got here, and that's the golden civilization. That vision is what we're going to do here. O is for obstacles, inner and outer. We don't always separate them like this, but in the golden civilization, we found it useful. And then the final bit is K and E, evoke, and that's for knowledge and execution. And here we reframe them into action steps that might be taken in various ways around the world. Our government could take it, our corporations could take it, our nonprofits could take it, our senior centers could take it, our yoga communities could take it, our local communities could take it, or we ourselves could take these action steps. So global to local to individual. And then, well, what's our commitment? After hearing all of this, what would we make a commitment to do between now and the next time we meet? What's the commitment I will make? And I, again, like I was doing with Frank a minute ago, Frank was a little worried I was going to push him too much, but also looking for it in a way. But my style is never a hard sell, it's never a push. So when I ask for commitments, if I've got a group of 6, 8, 10 people, that's the smallest group. Maybe occasionally there's 4 people, we'll do them. On the other end, there could be hundreds of people. So if it's a small group, well, even if it's a large group, I'm not going to look for a commitment from everybody. But if I can get a few commitments and people are hearing them and they go, wow, that would be cool, it raises their energy at the end of the meeting. And they think, oh, that's all we have to do. And sometimes it's just, I'm going to listen to my neighbor. You know, they're on the other side of the fence.
Yep.
You know, I'm suspicious they took my poster away for my candidate or whatever. I'm gonna listen to them because they're good people underneath it. I'm gonna listen. Or it could be, you know, I'm kind of a curmudgeon, and I'm gonna do an act of kindness every week or every day, and I'm gonna come back and tell you about it. Or so they could be very personal and very local. Or it could be, the country's going to hell in a handbasket. I'm going to help get the vote out. I'm going to see what I can do. Or I care about the environment, or I care about peace, so that I'm going to work on those kind of things. Or it could be, I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to join a meditation community. So one of the things, just because there's left and right, blue and red, whatever, I want to be, you'll read my book and you see I'm clearly on one side of the fence, but I want to be open. I want to be like that listener. I want to be open to everybody. So I support, someone comes up with a government solution, great, wonderful. Someone says, no, I like a corporate solution. This is what I think we ought to do. Great, wonderful. And my image is that if everybody's really going for the golden civilization, let's give them, fluid. Let's give them gas. Let's give them inspiration. Go for it. We're going to support you. So when people come back, they see the steps that have been taken that are positive. It's not about knocking other people down. And I will never knock people down in these meetings. It's like building, and if they start going, well, I don't like their solution, I go, that's not your business. They're going to make their solution work. And we're going to support them making the world a better place. That's what they're trying to do. And I'm going to support you making your world a better place. So that's how I've worked with the conflicts that have come up occasionally, but mostly don't come up. They mostly don't come up because people are respectful, and everybody wants kindness, a healthy society, a better planet, a better democracy. Everybody wants those things. So they see that everybody as individuals are good people trying to make a good difference.
So one quick question, George. So is it more of a group action or an individual action or some mix of both?
Fantastic question. And I know this will all be helping Frank as well. It's both, but here I am, facilitator. Okay, so I'm the facilitator. I could kind of push everybody to do my own thing, but as you've already gathered, I don't do that.
Right.
So, and I think that's a better way.
Okay.
So I mean, if people want to do what I want to do, that's great. But oftentimes, I don't even mention. I hardly mention at all what my positions are on these things. Occasionally, I'll float something in if I feel there's something, a big hole that's being missed. Or if someone comes out in a really hard case over on one side or the other of the political spectrum, I'll bring up something very gently on the other side and just say, well, you could also do it this way. Let's just keep it open for everybody to have alternatives. So, and then when it comes down to commitments, the greatest groups, by that I mean the groups that have been ongoing, have had subgroups within them, and individuals has been what's happened. So that the group as a whole, like the main group I talk about is a group in London, where they decided they would create a school of wisdom and solve wisdom problems, trying to bring more wisdom into institutional life, but into daily life throughout our lives. So they've done a lot of work on that, and but it's a subgroup. It's like half the group. So the group is at most 60 people, and I think the fewest people who've showed up have been 13. And it varies back and forth, and nobody's attached to how many people, the right people show up, and we just do whatever's there. But so half the group is working kind of independently on making this wisdom thing happen, and they bring back some of that to the group. Other people in the group are working on their spiritual practice, on homelessness, on specific political action, on kindness, on better listening. Those would be the classic things. And they might be doing it in 2s or 3s, or they might be doing it individually. Okay. So how does that sound?
That's helpful. Yeah, just to get a kind of a idea, I guess, of how pieces might fit together there. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
I like that.
And it's good when we come in, because you come into communities now. One of the things, Frank, that's scary about America is you can't talk. You know, there's all this stuff that is boiling up inside of you politically or whatever, and you simply can't talk in public spaces about it. So you're constantly kind of repressing a huge amount of feeling. And that repression, we know what Freud said about that. That ain't good. So what's lovely about this approach is that we're bringing all the positive stuff out and the actions out and supporting. And so Patrick, that would be a way of letting people know on both sides of the fence in the retirement community that, look, it's a friendly process. It's not about our differences. It's not about polarity. It's a friendly process. And we want to support everybody making a difference, making the world a better place.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So Frank, really you want to ask something, or do you want me to run through it a bit? Yeah.
I was just saying that's all. It's all really terrific, and there is a sense from across the border here of amongst so much, but there is a sense that repression you talk about, but also a general sense of anger that's now.
A general sense of what?
Anger. Animosity and anger, and obviously these are all things that are talked about so much, the fear, anger, animosity that's going on. So, but we sense it very strongly. My wife is she unfortunately follows it pretty closely, as well as the COVID stuff, because she's a retired epidemiologist and has some good knowledge of this, and is following Osterholm and some other people of intellect and scientific background.
Yep, exactly.
So anyway, it's disturbing to even go to those places, but there's a general sense of anger that's coming out of that, out of your country, and because of the leadership. So, but the kindness, great Buddhist kindness. How do we deal with, in yoga, we talk about dealing with animosity by being friendly. And it goes on, there's 4 dark veils, but the animosity is one that is prevalent these days, and it calls for us all to be more friendly with each other.
Yeah.
And kindness, to extend that into the Buddhist realms, we're talking kindness, right?
I love that, Frank. I love that. Wonderful reminder of those 4 realms, and really inspiring to hear about your wife. And again, I think it gives me a sense of support, because we're there with the epidemiologists, and having had that early pneumonia, it's possible it was COVID that I had.
Oh wow, yeah.
I mean, could have been.
Yeah, it's manifesting in so many different crazy ways, and it's not immediate. And some of these cases are coming back, 4 months later to manifest. So it's really bizarre.
So my long fatigue, in COVID, they're calling the long haul COVID, and it could. My symptoms are identical with the fatigue symptoms that many people have. So it could be, and as a consequence, I've had anger, because I thought this should have been addressed in January. And if it had been, it would have been minimized. And moreover, we could have been a light to the world, which is what democracy is meant to be in a way, and helped everybody. And instead, we're in the morass. So thank you for that, and your support. So let's go, and Frank, because you have a really strong grounding in a spiritual tradition, you may do your own form of meditative practice. What I do at the beginning of this is I just say, if a movement is going to be strong, it has to have some foundation in our wisdom or interior, in our spiritual interior. And so I'm going to just introduce it for a few minutes. And if it's a Buddhist community or a New Age community, I might do 10 minutes. But if it's not, I might do just a minute or two of silence, and largely going to the breath the way the kind of the traditional mindfulness teaching does.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that meditation, I will remind people that what they've just done, as they're still sitting there with quiet eyes, I will remind them that they've just deepened their capacity for patience, for a number of virtues, for patience, for kindness toward themselves, because whatever comes up, they just let go of and come back. They've built a capacity for equanimity about whatever arises, they can be there. And maybe some tranquility in there too.
Mm-hmm.
If there's been tough stuff that comes up, they may have built a capacity for forgiveness as they've forgiven themselves by letting go again of what came up. And they've also built their capacity for listening and for focus. And I'll say, as you come out of this meditation, this mindfulness experience, I want you to bring all of those qualities that you've just built in this 2 to 10 minute exercise. I want you to bring all of those qualities out. As you open your eyes and you see your community, you see your neighbors, knowing that when we talk about civilization, occasionally there can be political differences. So we want all of those virtues to be here. I'm going to admit Martin. We want all of those virtues to be here. And Natalie, let's get out of the slide so we can bring Martin in. So we want all of those virtues to be present, to be here. And I ask you all, when you hear a point of view that might differ from yours, bring kindness to it. Bring your open listening to it rather than judgment. Allow it in the space. And bring forgiveness if that's needed. Now, by and large, people, there aren't, you don't get tough stuff, but it reminds people to come with good listening, with virtue, with empathy. So that's the frame that we start with that. How does that sound? Yeah.
Great.
So it's a great link, and then you ask this question, and say, we're going to build our vision of a golden civilization, and it's going to be a vision. If we come back and do this again, it's going to be a vision that we're going to come back to. So it's pretty important that everybody participate and share what you think it would look like. And here's the frame for it. Because you might go, it'll never happen. So I want you to imagine that you're out maybe a couple hundred years, maybe a couple thousand years, but you're out long enough that we've done it. We've solved the Earth's problems, we've solved the problems of humanity, and we've made a golden civilization happen. So I'd like you to first imagine that it's there, that it's here. And it's come to us. It's here now. What does it feel like? And what are the qualities that are there? And so that's the question that you frame. And then you get people just bringing up all the qualities. Natalie, do you want to share just for a moment the circle that people shared? This was one group. It's a very sophisticated group, and sophisticated politically as well, I think. And we wrote more phrases. Normally, they're just words. Natalie, we don't have the wordscape here, do we? The word map?
What do you mean?
The thing that's on our website.
I could find that.
That would be lovely to see as well, because then people will see, because this is pretty detailed. But you'll see occasionally there's just words. But as I say, it was a very intelligent group and dedicated, and we wrote down everything. So Natalie, let's get out of this one, and then, or maybe, and then share screen again when you come to that, when you find that other word map.
Oh, George.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something. I go through a process in my life planning that I call goal storming.
Oh.
Which you call vision mapping, but you know, I just say, let's goal storm.
Yeah, great.
And don't stop the pen, let it ride, create your visions, all your goals, everything, with really no attention to time frames. So you might have something that you want to do this afternoon mixed in with something that you want to be doing 20 years from now. Get them all down on paper and don't stop writing for 10 minutes.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And then, so that's your vision mapping, but
Beautiful.
and then come back to it and start to circle, you know, all those things you want to do next 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, lifetime.
Beautiful.
And then you start to go. So that's, I don't know if you can work that.
Well, as you're thinking, as you're saying it, you know, as you know, I'm a facilitator and a creator of workshops. So I'm going all these different ways. So there've been times in workshops where we've had a group of people, we've had everybody do these little sticky notes and write down the 3 things that they think should be in that golden civilization. And then they put those sticky notes up.
Yeah.
And so that's one way of doing it as well. Of course, you'd want to read it. One of the nice things about having people speaking it out as someone on Zoom may be typing it in, or you might have them type into a chat. So if you're on Zoom, you could have people chatting it in, and then someone could be in charge of collating them at the end and putting them all into a big circle. So that's what we did in that one that you see.
Exactly.
We didn't quite get it up the first time. We put it up eventually, but we had a bunch of them first time. So yeah, that's cool. And then another thing you could do is if you have them write for 10 minutes, that's a wonderful exercise, Frank. Just have people, instead of the dystopia that we see around us all the time, imagine utopia. What does it really look like? And write it. And then maybe have people go around and read what people wrote and circle the 3 things that they think are just stunning for them, would just really make it. And then build the golden civilization out of the circles. And maybe give the ones that had the most circles get a larger size in the circle. And that's one of the things Natalie's looking for. Did you find it?
I have it, yeah.
Well, let's put that up. That's great, Natalie. So we're going to share the screen again and just see. So this was of our first 20. And you'll see, you know, you'd have a lot of those, right? No war, kindness, community, listening, love, freedom, transparency, respect, connection, harmony, togetherness, creativity, contribution, equality, trust, right? And it's just beautiful. And Frank and Patrick and Martin, this happens all over the world. I've given this all over the world. Same things, because they're what's in here. They're who we are, ultimately, who we really want to be, who we know that we are inside. Yeah. So I don't always tell people in advance that it's going to be just like everybody else's. I just say, let's see what ours is.
Yeah.
And then you come back to it.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do, if you look on our Facebook Golden Civilization group site, is this group in London created a poem about what their vision was. And the poem, Frank, is very similar, Frank and Martin, it's very similar to the evoke lighting the torch. So if as a consequence of our work together, Patrick, this is a term of art at the end of the second meeting, in the life planning meeting where you're with the individual client, you'll have their vision. We don't put it in a circle. We put it into a kind of an offer. And we say, if as a consequence of our work together, Patrick, you and I, were to deliver, and here it would be to the world, but to deliver to you, that ski trip with your kids, in Utah, playing the saxophone on Wednesday nights in your community, participating in an environmental kind of thing. And if we were to give that to you, and that was to start, and you're living now more with the home that you want if we were to give that to you within a year and a half, how would that be? And it's always something they want in 10 years or 30 years or something, and they're just blown away by it. So That's what several of my books are about that. But so here what we do in a golden civilization is we say, okay, so what if as a consequence of our work together, us community, this community, what if as a consequence of our work together, we, in collaboration with these other groups that are happening all over the world, and there have been hundreds of these things that have happened in India, they've happened in Africa, they've happened all over Europe, happened all over America. In collaboration with these groups, what if we were to deliver a golden civilization to the world within a single generation? How would that be? And you see, it's the same thing as shrinking the retirement down to 1.5 years in a way. It gets you very excited and gets you anxious at the same time. But what it means is what we're trying to do is just build this incredible energy around it.
Mm-hmm.
And anxiety and excitement are very similar energies. In fact, they're identical in the body. That physically, your motors, you know, what goes on in your body's just identical if you're excited to being anxious. So so if within a generation we were to deliver this to the world, how would that be? And people just go, awesome, that'd be incredible. And of course they go, oh no, it'll never happen. No. In collaboration, imagine this movement happening all over the world. We're no longer just tied to our politicians. We're doing it. Participative democracy, we're making it happen. How would that be? And you just build them, present it again and again until they go, yeah, that'd be incredible. And then go, you know, back Frank, to your poor wife going through, and all of us in America going through, the reading the stuff daily. Okay, so we get the excitement, and with that excitement, the notion is we can conquer anything. So let's look at what the obstacles are, and we're not going to do a really deep dive into the obstacles because we can get overwhelmed by them. But let's get a quick sense of what those obstacles are. So I won't listen and listen and listen and listen because they can go on forever. But I'll get a bunch out. I'll fill that sheet. And then we'll just call it quits. And we're kind of marshaling the time too. If you're doing this, it's critical you get to commitments at the end. Because the commitments are what brings the energy back up. So you're going to vision, high energy, great stuff. You started kind of with quiet and kind of gathering together, joining together in the spirit in a way. And then you create a vision, creates great energy. And then you go, okay, we're going to look at the challenges. And here you'll get them. You'll get them in spades, and I'll mention what the top ones are in a moment. But you go down there and you go, okay. And so, all right, how could the world solve these? How could we solve them? And I'm not asking for your own commitments yet, but I'm asking for action steps that, you know, the head of the UN might take, the head of a great country might take, the head of corporations or nonprofits, or we as citizens or communities, or just individually with our families. What are the actions? Okay, so that's beginning to get people look, oh, well, there may be solutions. Let's look at them. And then the arc of this goes up from actions, from, you know, down the depths of the darkness and obstacles up to actions. You're beginning to create some hope. And then with commitments, it's like light is coming into the room. Because you get, hopefully, 3 or 4 people at a minimum, better 5 or 6, go, well, I'm willing to do this. And I'm going to try this. And the main thing I look for, I try to build a little bit, again, back to the soft sell. I would love everybody to give this workshop, everybody, because we've all got families. So even if you're part of the Frank Stolar's yoga pod of golden civilization vision, everybody in that, if they were each of them to give it at their church or their book reading club or their environmental club or a political thing, or just in their family or their extended family, if they were to give one, then imagine that just spreads that message out there and brings more and more hope. And then they've got all of that to bring in. to the community. So I do pitch that as a potential commitment. And it's one of the exciting commitments that happens at the end, is that typically you'll get 2 or 3 people. You know, you never get your hopes up. Sometimes there's nobody. Sometimes it's 5 or 6 or the whole group. But that means it's spreading. And that's what we want, because we want to be able to begin to collaborate someday. Again, no attachment to what happens. So that's the arc of it. And maybe I'll pause with that arc and come back and look at some of the charts as we looked at the vision chart. We may look at the obstacles chart and the actions chart in a moment. Any questions there on that arc? You see how the arc is really lovely, but you have to get to commitments. You have to time it well. You need a good 15 minutes at the end for commitments. So you want to make sure that you get to that. Now that said, I've done this thing in 20 minutes. I've done it in 3 hours. And probably a good time for it is 1.5 hours to 2 hours. And you should try it out, but you need to watch out that you don't get lost in either the vision or the obstacles. You want to get to commitments. So you just go, next meeting, we can dive into that. I know you want to dive into what freedom means. Does it mean freedom to own my property, or does it mean freedom of speech? You know, you want to, you know, and what does democracy mean? I know you want to dive into that. We can dive into that next time. But now I just want a kind of a gestalt of the whole thing, kind of an image of the whole thing. All right, so you're positive, you don't shame anybody for bringing up those things. And similarly around the obstacles. Yeah, we can dive into how dark those corporations can be or how bad that government can be. But you know what? Let's just get it up there, get it listed. And we'll come back next meeting and we'll dive deeper. And moreover, we want to get to actions, what we might be able to do now about some of it. So I'm keeping it positive all the time and not letting it get bogged down. In a follow-up meeting, we might have subgroups. Back to your question, Patrick, do we do something as a group as a whole, or are there subgroups? We might say, hey, let's take the top 3 obstacles. Let's rate them. And in a 2-hour meeting, I may have already rated them in this first meeting. What are the top obstacles? And get everybody to vote on what they think is the top obstacle, or the top 2, or the top 3. And then and then in the next meeting, we might have a subgroup diving into racism, or a subgroup diving into anger, or a subgroup diving into fear, or a subgroup diving into corruption. There you go. Or homelessness, or you know, prejudice, or whatever. And they're wonderful. So, you know, wow, people are actually getting busy going into that. And then they come up with action steps for their little group. And that's inspiring for them then.
George, one quick question. How do we solve these, or the solutions or the actions, that part of the arc? How do you gather those and pull those into a shape that people can consider? What do you put them up on a flip chart, or?
I use that set of 3 things: vision, obstacles, and then actions and commitments. Those are 3 separate flip charts that I use. If you've got a big whiteboard, you can do it all on a whiteboard, but you want to have it so you can bring it back next time. You definitely want to remember to take pictures of them all, snap photos. Feel free to share them with us. We'll popularize them, what you guys came up with. Also, if people are willing to get their pictures taken in front of that vision of golden civilization, that flip chart, we'll again put those pictures up, put them in our website, or at least put them out in a newsletter if people are interested. And it's exciting, inspiring to people. Right. Gosh, in this little town in Utah, or up in Nova Scotia, in a yoga community, these things are happening. It's very exciting to people.
And so, what's the workaround doing this virtually? Because I'm thinking still in our current situation, this is has to be a video conference.
Yes.
Not quite as clean for pulling stuff together like that.
No. So it helps. And this is one reason I have Natalie here, although at this point, I can do it myself. The simple stuff I've been sharing, because it's easy enough to share a screen. But it would be wonderful to have one person who is doing more of the facilitating, and another person who's kind of doing the sharing of the screen, and then is collecting the chats, typing them in to the PowerPoint. So behind this, they've got a PowerPoint and they're typing in the answers. So that you can see some of that live, some of it might happen for the next meeting because you may not be able to get through all the typing. You want to make sure it's also being recorded so that you get all that stuff and the chats recorded and all of that. So, it really helps to do it in a team, but I've done it one-on-one. I've just not been as good at collecting the information at the end. So good if you can have somebody who's willing to volunteer to do more of that piece of it.
Okay, good, makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, great. Yeah, and it is inspiring. And so in obstacles and actions, you can get bogged down in both. And I would watch out of not getting bogged down too much in the obstacles. I just go, at some point I go, gosh, I know we could go on forever around obstacles. I'd like to park it here. So you might ask everybody just for their number one external obstacle, their number one internal obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a modest sized group, you get plenty of stuff even there. If it's a tiny group, you could have their top three, something like that, and top three obstacles overall. And then I will move on to actions fairly quickly. Let everybody know that you can come back for the next meeting and really dive into these things. You also, if you feel like you got plenty of time, like you're doing a 2-hour time frame and you go, oh, wow, I don't have enough time to fill all this. You go, okay, let's prioritize now. We've got, 30 obstacles up here. Let's vote for what do we think is absolutely the most important one here. And maybe we'll each vote for one internal and one external. Okay. So Peter, what do you vote for? And you circle them, or you give a red mark and you mark, how many votes each of the obstacles gets. And then you go, we're not going to go further than this. But you know what was really amazing to me, guys? This was astonishing. I gave this at a senior center here. Okay. Now Massachusetts is a relatively liberal state, but I'm more in the country. There's a lot of red communities where we are. I went to a senior center out in the country here, and I did all the guys. Okay. I don't think there was one of them younger than me. They were in their 70s and older. And when I had them vote for what the number one obstacle was, the overwhelming response was, and this was, I want you to know, this was way back in March, before we totally closed down, way back in March, maybe late February, March. Number one obstacle, racism. Totally white community, totally white group of old guys. I looked at them and I was worried early on, is this going to be so biased in one direction or another? Racism. It basically said to me, something's up in the country. It sounds like we're ready to tackle this. So it wasn't a surprise to me at all when all this erupted a couple of months later. So I just want to say, you're going to find some amazing things when you get that vote. But it localizes where they want to act. So when it would come down to action steps, I didn't have time to have them vote there, but I'm sure that they would have voted on something having to do with ending racism on the action steps. So you can have them vote on obstacles or not. I kind of like it. If I have plenty of time, I will. I'll also have them vote on, I'll get 15 or 20 action steps. By no means will you get all of them. And I'll have people vote on those as well. Education is a common one that's very strong for people. And that's very cool. And so it's lovely to see what the strong subgroups will be of this community. Because then you go, wow, we're going to make a difference in this area. Very cool. So that's the frame there. And again, with action steps, we could go on and on. We can come back, and I don't want anybody to feel left out. We're hoping for a meeting now, 3 weeks from now, to come back and look at this again. If you've got other action steps that didn't get up here, bring them in. You know, let's get them up there. And similarly around obstacles. So, so that's very cool. And then you move on to commitments. And the way you go to commitments is you ask, so if, you know, you've heard all this and you're inspired about a golden civilization, you've seen the actions. What about yourselves? What's changed for you in this last hour and a half? What would you like to make a commitment to? And here's where I go, by the way, there is one that I'm attached to. I'd love to see everybody try this golden civilization conversation in their own communities, even over your kitchen table with your immediate family. I'd love to see everybody try it. And because that way we're building this movement, just very simply. So I want to say that I'm biased toward that. I'd love to hear that, but it could be anything. It could be personal acts of kindness or meditation, or it could be something, you know, political or environmental or whatever, and you reference back to what the issues were in any of these charts. What commitment can you make to do over the next 3 weeks between now and when we come back together and look at this again? And then pause. And you just kind of hold the space. And if you've got a spouse, you might seed it a bit just in case nobody speaks up. Or you've got a very good friend, you might let them know. So you could seed it a bit. You can seed it yourself, but pauses are really good. Frank knows this because it's one of the things we teach in the life planning community. Pauses are really good. They raise a little anxiety, but they build, you know, the heart is allowed room to come in. So allow that pause, milk it even, and go, I'm going to wait here. You know, what commitment would you make? And then seed it if it feels like it's going too long. You know, your spouse speaks up or your partner speaks up or a good friend. Pause again. Bring your own up, you know, a bit later. Pause again. You'll get a few, and that's what you want. So, and then you set up the time and meeting time and location for the next time. Like you've already kind of thought about that, or you ask people, would it be all right, you know, if we come back? How many of you would like to go further with this? And how would a meeting be, you know, 3 weeks from now? And I think you could go as long as 3 months. That's an awfully long time. But if it's kind of a kind of a lazy group, you could do that. I think the most active is a couple of weeks. And during the political season, there's more activity that happens if there are strong subgroups happening. So that's kind of the frame. And any questions? And Frank, just thinking about the yoga community, bringing it into them.
Yeah, this whole time that we're spending together, George, it's very precious time. You know, you're a mentor for me. I've always appreciated your optimism, energy, positivity, and thanks for sharing your energy. You know, whatever you've got going on there, it can't be easy. But the thing is that, you know, it's through the energy. It becomes self-fueling, and it's evident in you. And I think that's what continues to draw me back to you and what you've done with Kinder Institute and Golden Civilization is how through creating these visions and you know, dealing with the obstacles and then going deep into commitments and seeing where that energy is, it becomes self-fueling. And that's the part of it that excites me, keeps me coming back. And it's because I've seen it in my clients and I've seen it in myself through my practice, how that continues to energize me. It's through that passion that gets generated, and it's the passion that becomes the fuel, which is then ultimately what you start to consume to grow further and bigger. So that's what this is about. And if we can, you know, this work is about creating a bigger snowball and letting that snowball take over and then become so collective in everything that it swallows along its path. So that's the passion. That's the passion, and you know, as I say, you know, it's very evident in everything that you've done, George, and congratulations for doing that. My yoga community is small right now, but I'm looking to build it through the life planning side of things. It's interesting about the life planning. I'll just comment about myself for a minute, but I get nourished by the life planning that I do, but I don't do a lot of it. I'm looking to do more since I've retired from my financial planning business. My emphasis will be on the life planning, and I look forward to doing more, and then rolling this mindfulness and well, we'll see where we go with this golden civilization conversation, but definitely mindfulness is a big part of it too going forward. So yeah, I'm not sure what else I want to say about that, but take it over, George or Martin or Patrick.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, just connect a bit more around this. So one thing, Frank, I was really impressed with your talking about the yogic tradition and the realms and relating it to golden civilization, relating it to mindfulness.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, if you were to write something, could be just a paragraph or it could be a page or two, I think Natalie and I would be very interested if you connected it to these themes of mindfulness and golden civilization, because those are two major themes that we're working with all the time. I think we'd be very open to publishing it in some way, posting it in some way. So if you think that that would be something you'd like to do and might be useful in promoting who you are and what you're doing and what you stand for,
right,
as well as these other areas, just know that we're open, and we might suggest an editor or two, but I think we'd be open to that. So
okay, cool. I really appreciate that, because the timing is right to expand my horizons and my energies and the direction that I want to go. So that's a terrific opportunity. I'll give that some thought and be in touch.
Great. And is there anything, you know, as you think about the yoga community, or Patrick, your community of elders, of seniors, or Martin, your communities, is there anything you can think of? Like, we've got a lot of resources on the site that's called goldencivilization.com. A lot of resources there if you really explore it. But if you did, are there resources that would help you kind of, because many of us are in these bubbles, little quarantines. Are there resources that would help you promote it in the community, or just ask the question, would you be interested in having a conversation, or I'm going to host this conversation, who among you would like to come? And I think, Natalie, do we have kind of flyers like that are available there? So we do have some literature sharing how to do that. So let me just suggest this. That would seem like the first step, is just kind of putting it out, getting the frame together, and what you need is a date and a time and a location, basically.
So George, let me speak to that for a moment,
Sure.
and thank you again for doing this. I am incredibly energized by all of this, and I am, unlike Frank, who was sort of retired, I guess, but I am not. I'm in the middle of my financial practice. Right now I'm struggling to put all these things together in a coherent plan and a vision, live my words, speak to my clients, speak to my community, which is my yoga community, and people we socialize with. My wife Barbara is a Buddhist practitioner for the last 25 years, and she's talking to her Sangha sisters. I've kind of dropped out of my Sangha, but I'm gonna re get into that. I've also brought this up to my clients and my financial planning clients. And so I'm right now, I have to say, I'm a little worried about the time commitment. How much can I do? When I talk about this with Barbara, she said, stay in your lane, because she knows I get excited about stuff and then I get overwhelmed, and then nobody's helped with that. So I don't know what I'm asking is, how much of what can I do that? Because I'm in the middle actually of a big growing my financial practice, and it's consuming a lot of my my energy and also thinking about it, because this is all, it involves digital social media marketing, which is, because I'm an old guy, I don't have any experience with that, so there's a lot of learning involved. I do want to include all this in, because it's inevitable when I find myself at a point in my life I think I cannot stand by. Example, I'm becoming friends with my personal trainer, who is African American, and because it's inevitable, because the guy's incredibly open-minded. Every time I meet with him, he trains me. He tells me a story about racism, how we grew up in Atlanta. Yesterday, he told me, I wake up angry every morning. That just blew me away. I mean, I said, Keith, how do you deal with that? So then we talked about that for 20 minutes, and I think, oh my Lord, this is so, our backgrounds could not have been more different, but I'm really attracted to this guy because he is so open. And now he has this challenge of anger. And then I said, so what do you do? He said, well, I get on my knees and pray for my mother and for my friends. And I thought, wow, you're a better guy than I am. So I get incredibly inspired by people like that. So I have this enormous desire to come up with a coherent sort of way. Somebody termed it, live your words. I want to live my words. Time for just talking about it is over. I mean, if you see something, you got to do something. So, and I thank you for your book and your vision, leadership and energy and all that. And thank Yuval Harari and Thomas Piketty, because it all starts to make sense right now. I'm sorry, I'm going in circles here, but I'm a little concerned how much time is just going to chew up. Can I really do this? So, can you speak to that a little bit, George?
Yeah, I could, and I'm already in love with your wife. Not, don't worry, Martin, but because you know, the fact that she's been in a sangha for 25 years, you know, obviously that's something I'm very familiar with. But the and stay in your lane. I think you couldn't ask for better advice. Stay in your lane so that you're really grounded. That's the best contribution you can make. You're obviously an inspiring and an inspired person, and you're growing, and that's so clear. Stay in your lane, and if you find the space where you feel you could and you'd want to do a golden civilization conversation, do it simply. Yeah, do it simply. Do it. Gather a group that's very simple for you around. Before you go and gather all your clients, maybe gather 5 or 10 people that you're close with. Maybe that might be an easy way to do it. You just see how you do it, and you'll see that it's really pretty easy, pretty simple. I'd say that 8 to 12 people is a great size for a group. You get rich conversations. Look, even here at the conversations we're having with just 5 of us, and so I'd start modestly and cut your teeth on it, basically, without feeling that you have to worried about how you do it and all that. And then see if you can set up to a larger group. I've done, oh gosh, I'm thinking the largest client group I've done, maybe 50 or 100. But I have done groups that size of clients, of other advisors, like myself. And they're inspiring because they are from, they're from different camps, but they find that they're all in the same camp when it comes to the humanity of a golden civilization. and they're all in the same camp for wanting to make it that beautiful a place and to solve the obstacles. So that's a wonderful thing to build toward. But I like what Barbara's saying about staying in your lane. And her communities sound like they would be lovely too to engage with. So
Right.
I mentioned this earlier. My time is limited because of both health and commitments that I have. But both myself and Mary Zimmerman and Laura Woodward have all volunteered to support other places. Sometimes we get paid to do it. Sometimes we're just offering it. And so keep that in mind if you want us to pitch in some way to start the ball rolling, basically.
Right.
So, yeah. And Natalie's been putting a lot of things in your chats that you want to make sure that you notice about resources and everything. Wonderful, Martin. Thank you.
George, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having you or one of your colleagues involved at some point in the conversation. Do you find that's most appropriate at the outset, or as you're building some momentum, or what's been your experience with that?
Well, I think at any time, more often than not, we're called into the first one just because it's the first, it's the first one, and they're nervous about it, and we're called in. But as I say, we've tried to design the structure so it's really simple, so that pretty much anybody could do it, and you aren't gonna do something wrong or inappropriate, almost no matter how you do it. So I just, what I'd probably do if I were wrestling with that question is kind of dive in and see what you think and where you feel your weaknesses are. You can also, we have these conversations every 3 weeks. I try to. I think we're coming into a period of time where there may be a slight conflict with a meditation group I'm teaching. So we're going to be figuring that out over the next few weeks. But I try to do these every 3 weeks. And so that there's more opportunity to just ask me directly. You can also email us and ask us any questions you have.
Okay.
So that's email Laura or email Natalie would be the appropriate email. Yeah.
And then I had one other question, George, just a quick follow-up on that. In the community this size, I could just reach out to kind of like-minded people. I've got a network of those folks. Or there's an opportunity that I could reach out to the entire or big segment of the community and kind of blanket them with this opportunity. Thoughts on that? We do have a conservative bent in Utah, and this particular community seems to be conservative minded. And so thoughts on whether starting small or just throw it out there and see who shows up type thing.
Great. So I'm taking it that you probably are more in the liberal camp than the conservative camp in your.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And I probably right now, because of the, and Natalie may disagree, and I'd love her thoughts if she has some thoughts about this, because we've got obviously lots of experience. But my inclination, given that you're just starting it, my inclination, and given the intensity of these next few weeks, my inclination would be to do it with the group that you feel most comfortable with, because then there's less anxiety around the whole process. You'll learn a lot by doing that, and then talk with them and say, I really want to open this up to everybody, but I thought while the polarization was high and the intensity was high, it might make more sense to start with us and then reach out. That would be my inclination. Natalie, do you have any other thoughts from your perspective?
I would say that, like, I feel like I agree, but not necessarily like-minded people so much as just people who you know really well, people who you're comfortable with. I feel like they don't necessarily have to be of the same political mind or the same social mind as you, so long as you already feel comfortable.
We can talk openly and have a connection already.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
I appreciate that, because that was one thing that I've done a couple other workshops and have already kind of a network of people that I think would be inclined to at least consider this conversation.
Yeah.
Do you find that you need people to have read the book or have some level of familiarity with your work prior to this, or are the promotional materials that you have already in the pocket there enough to get it going?
I think the promotional materials are enough to get it going, and
Okay.
and the book has a decidedly liberal frame because it's utopian ultimately. I mean, it's really looking at what a golden civilization looks like. But I was, I grew up in I cut my teeth in the world that Frank and Martin are in right now, which is the financial world, and that has a lot of conservative bias, a lot of approaches to markets and capitalism that I understand very well and believe in, so I can hold both points of view. I would say for you, it would probably be very helpful to read the book, but
Okay.
not as a necessary prerequisite. I wouldn't have it hold you back from delivering this. Yeah, and that would be my thought.
No, very helpful, helping me get my kind of head around what the next steps might look like.
Yeah, great. And
So, George, can I ask another question? So, as I said before, I'm really trying to incorporate the personal and with my business practices to present a unifying idea to clients and friends alike. I mean, about 15 years ago, Barbara and I started having parties for friends and clients. And I know a friend of mine came up to me and said, "How can you do that? I mean, some of these people are your clients and we're your friends." And I said, "Well, why not? Because there's kind of no difference." So I'd like to take this a step further and really incorporate the golden civilization ideas and the stuff that you're talking about and fully incorporate that into my business plan and my communication to my clients and prospective clients. Can you make a suggestion of a person or persons or a avenue where I can further use it as a model or a template to integrate those both, the ideas and what I'm currently doing? Because as you said, I was at a seminar a year ago, and there were like, I don't know, 120 advisors in the room, and the presenter said, "I'm always interested in the political angle. Can I see a show of hands of who is Republican and Democrat?" I was dumbfounded. 95% were Republicans, and I was one of the 5 guys' hands went up. I couldn't believe it. That might be different now. So I'm sorry, I digress with that, but I just wanted to throw that in. So any suggestions of resource ideas, or somebody who's already done it and said, "Okay, so this is one way to do it." Any suggestions there, George?
well, first of all, I'm just curious, was the conference that you went to of financial advisors?
Yes.
Yeah. So and Martin, how much have you taken our programs in life planning? Have you done any of our?
They always seem to be in Massachusetts or Hawaii. So I'm waiting for one in Los Angeles on the West Coast, and I'll be there. What can I tell you?
Well, if you can take the time ever at all, they're now on Zoom, and they're even more impactful because you can
I didn't even know.
We can see each other directly, and
Okay.
which is really cool. And so the intimacy that we train is even more, and Frank, you would be interested in this, the intimacy is even more amazing because you aren't watching a dyad up in front of you and you can hardly hear sometimes, and you can't quite see their face. You see them directly. So if Louis is leading the thing, you're seeing him straight on with the person that he's working with, or myself. So anyway, the 2 days and the 5 days are both online. The 5 days is now called a 4-day. It's called our Evoke program, and it's the most impactful. It's extraordinary, the 4-day. The reason that I'm asking that is that one of the ways to integrate this And in a way, Frank is thinking about this himself as he's dropped the financial piece of it, but he's still doing the life planning piece of it.
Right.
And one of the ways that I think of the golden civilization work is what we're doing is we are life planning civilization.
Right.
And so if your community becomes aware of what life planning is because you've integrated that into the community, it becomes something very easy for them to go, oh, wow, that's intriguing. How does that work? And that's where I've seen more of the ease of financial advisors bringing their clients in and having client appreciation day. And in that client appreciation day, they go, look, we've done life planning with you. We're gonna do a life planning of civilization and show you how that works, because it works just as well with civilization.
Right.
So that's really how it works, I think.
Got it. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
And we've got just 5 minutes left, and since I brought the pressure to Frank, I'm going to keep the fire going over there and just seeing if you have any thoughts about going forward with this, with the yoga community, and where you might go in your next step.
Well, the intention for some time now has been to bring the Golden Civilization talks to my yoga group, and that's where I go. I'm restarting yoga actually this Saturday after having been off for August. And yeah, so it's a new season we're kicking off, and this will be part of my intro. So I always intro with something, the first 10, maybe 15 minutes, I'll have a talk. It'll either be about a sutra or and I could probably link that in with Golden Civilization, life planning, but yeah, this whole evolution that I'm going through now, I share a little bit of that with the group, and so Golden Civilization talk will evolve into that as well. So that's where I'm heading with this.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Frank. And let me just do a quick round and just see, are there any commitments? We'll end the way we normally do. Are there any commitments anyone willing to make between now and the next time we gather together of just next steps? Anybody else like to share anything?
Yeah, my commitment is to continue to bring up the precepts and the commitment, the visions and the goals of Golden Civilization. And I've done that for the last couple of months. My buddy Richard Harmel, which I think is a great addition to the group, has now joined, and he has his own circle, and we have talked about this. So I will continue to do that, really, not just because it's on my list, but because it's in my mind, because it's my thinking. So yeah, I am committed to that.
Great. Thank you, Martin. Thank you.
And I was muted when I started to talk, but I would like to do this in October and give myself a chance to read the book, look through your materials a little bit more in detail. And I know we have some people here in the community that are keen on doing something like this. And so, like a lot of things in my life of late, these things seem to kind of present themselves at the time when they're needed. I sometimes just have to sit back and let it come to me rather than going out and trying to dig it up. So very happy, George, that I heard your talk, and this kind of fits right what my world needs right now, and I think the bigger world needs right now. So awesome that you've been able to take your life's work with your life planning and see the bigger application here on a societal or global level. I think it really is cool. I hope a lot of folks grab this and run with it. And thank you, Natalie. I appreciate your comments earlier too. So yeah, thank you. And you said there's no issue with us popping back into these sessions every few weeks. And
That's right.
Okay, because I think as I get into it a little bit more, there'll be some more thoughts that pop up that I'd appreciate your input on. So
wonderful. I assume we have your information, your email, because as I say, there might be slight changes because I'm also running a meditation group that's around the same time, and we have to think through how these will be structured. But you're welcome. Everybody's welcome to these. My pleasure.
Great. Yeah, I just wrote to your one colleague asking for the Zoom for your meditation classes. So I think through these two avenues, I should be able to keep track of.
Oh, wonderful, Patrick. Wonderful. Yeah. Oh, great. Oh, so I'm so pleased to have met you and through the great community that Dory's part of.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Nice to meet Martin and Frank as well. And so thank you. This was a good hour and a half well spent.
Thank you. Thank you.
A quick piggyback on that, Patrick. If you have some time as sort of like a theoretical underpinning as the things that George is talking about, it's kind of a fat book, but it gives you the real underpinnings why we have the society that we have today. Piketty is a French economist, and it's a bit dry, I have to say, but there are some really strong insights. You have to skip a lot because it's like 600 pages, but I only read about maybe half of those. It dovetails very nicely with George's book. So,
awesome. Thank you, Martin. Yeah. All right, appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks, everybody.
Nice to see you. Keep up the good work.
See you soon. Thank you, my friend.
Take care.
Well done. Thank you, Natalie.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.